Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. Apparently, that is American Liberation Day. Liberation Day is a common federal holiday across the world. Countries usually hold it on a day of major national significance, like a major changing of the guard and government, usually the local population being freed from an invader and regaining or gaining for the first time its independence. In Afghanistan, Liberation Day is February 15, 1989, the day the Soviet Union withdrew from the country after getting trounced in the first ever Black Ops mission set in the Middle East. For a lot of other countries, Liberation Day is when they were freed from Nazi occupation. And apparently, America's Liberation Day is liberation for access to foreign goods. Broadly, imports, like all of them. And truthfully, I'm already feeling liberated. I feel so much lighter before because of how much emptier my pockets are. If you didn't follow what happened on Wednesday very closely, basically drop shippers everywhere started pooing their pants. And you might find it fitting that April Fool's was Liberation Day Eve. Hi again, fellas, and I talk about politically adjacent topics here from time to time. I don't really keep my leanings a secret, but usually they're things that have wider-reaching consequences, like a TikTok ban or the flocking to Red Note, or even if there's just an aspect of a situation I find funny to hone in on, like the JD Vance stuff. But even then, this video might seem a little aggressive, like tariffs in the title? Most of the videos out about this topic right now are from CNN and other lamestream media, as well as like finance channels. Also, H-Rock had like 3 things on this out within the first 24 hours. But Liberation Day is a moniker that Trump has been using for a while, most recently as the day Trump said he was going to announce these new and sweeping tariffs. Thing is, up till the final bell, he was keeping very quiet about what to expect from those tariffs. The markets did not know what was coming down the drain, and there was a lot of speculation on just how hard he was going to go. Before that, though, you might be asking, what even is a tariff? So, really rushed and quick definition for you. Basically, a tariff is a sales tax that can be applied to specific imports, and it's a tax paid by the person who is having that thing imported. Let me give you an example. Let's say a 20% tariff is put on all socks imported from Japan. A 20% sock tariff on Japan. Yeah, that sounds good. Japan is not the one who pays the cost of that tariff. It's actually the company in America who bought those socks and is having them imported here who has to pay that 20% tax, on top of what the socks already usually cost them. To make up for the extra money that company had to spend on importing the socks, they might raise the price of those socks by 20% or more that you, the consumer who buy it from the company, have to pay. Meanwhile, in theory, socks that were made in America or in other countries that we have not applied that tariff to, theoretically they don't have this price hike, making them more appealing to buy instead of the imported Japanese socks. Like I said, that's at least how it works in theory. In practice, it tends to make the price of all socks sold go up and contributes to inflation because of that. There's like a lot of nuance there, but that's not important for what we're getting into here, because that was always with targeted tariffs in mind. Which brings us back to the question of how big was Trump gonna go? Is it not gonna be as massive as we thought, and he's just talking a big game for the sake of it? Is he actually gonna go bar for bar in this beef with every country on the planet, issuing reciprocal tariffs, as in matching every single tariff any country has already put on America? Well, it turns out it was kind of that last one, and then some extra on top, because why not? If you're already going big, you might as well go big enough that gravity implodes on itself. As seen on Slack, written by a guy who possibly believes this unironically, perhaps Trump meant liberation in a Buddhist sense. Liberation from my material possessions. Trump pulled up to the White House Rose Garden with a big old prop with a bunch of words and numbers listed on it. His hands are so wrinkled these days that it always looks like he's wearing gloves. And the list contained pretty much every country on the planet, where on the left is the amount that Trump says other countries are charging us in tariffs, and on the right is what Trump is calling a reciprocal tariff. He's saying that because we're nice, though, we're only charging half of what they're charging us. And at first glance, you might look at these numbers and think, wow, are we really being charged that much in tariffs by other people already? And the answer is no, we aren't, but I'll get to that. If you didn't know that before I told you, some of these numbers look ridiculous. And that's because they are. Vietnam does not have a 90% tariff rate across the board from anything they buy from us. Practically no one has across-the-board tariffs. The Trump team said they did like crazy epic math to get these numbers and actually calculated all the different ways countries have been exploiting us, not just tariff rates, arriving at a number that accounts for all of it. But this guy, James Surowiecki, called bullshit on that pretty early. He cracked the exact formula they were using on his own. Turns out they weren't basing this on tariff rates at all. They were literally taking the trade deficit that America has with any given country and cutting it in half, and that is the tariff tariff rate we give them. Let me explain so you can understand how fucking stupid that is. A trade deficit is when a country imports more stuff than it exports. In other words, you're buying more shit than you sell. The example that James used is Indonesia, where last year we bought about $28 billion worth of stuff from Indonesia, and Indonesia bought about $11 billion worth of stuff from us. In billions, the amount of money America spent, 28, minus the amount of money Indonesia spent, 10 equals 18. This means we spent $18 billion more on stuff from Indonesia than they spent on stuff from America. Our trade deficit is $18 billion in this case. To get it as a percentage, the Trump team then divides the trade deficit by our imports. In this case, 18 divided by 28 equals 0.64. Cut that in half like the Trump team said they were doing, and what do you know? It's the exact tariff rate of Indonesia. You can do this with pretty much every country we've put tariffs on. The deficits are that high because we buy more shit from other countries than they buy from us. If you want to make an argument that, like, that dynamic isn't so good, sure, but the interaction itself is an exchange. There is a thing somebody in America wanted from another country. A guy in that other country has it, so the guy in America pays them to get the thing they want. The Trump administration tried to claim this was not the formula they were using by linking to an official government page that had a fancy formula on it. They used a bunch of smart-looking Greek letters to represent certain variables. The only issue is when you broke the formula down on the official government website to its basic steps, it's the exact same shit I just described to you. On its face alone, that's really dumb, but where the idea may have come from originally is even worse in my opinion. Like, if some random intern proposed this, they'd probably be shot down and then taken out back to be literally shot in the head for being so cringe. But after people figured out what the formula was, they got curious and asked like a bunch of AI models like ChatGPT what formula they would use for a task like this. And a bunch of the major ones, ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Grok, all gave the formula that is currently being used by the government. Think about that for a second. There is a healthy chance that the government used AI-generated blurbs to inform foreign policy decisions. In the past, there were rumors that based on typos, formatting errors, and other markers in documents, that somebody on the Trump team might have been using AI to generate executive orders a few months back. But if they're using AI for shit as important as setting erotically high tariff rates, we are in a different universe entirely. There are some countries that actually buy more stuff from the US than we buy from them. Like, they give us more money than we give them in sales, but they're still smacked with a baseline 10% tariff. No one got a pass. Well, actually, there were a few guys who didn't get hit, at least not harder than they were being hit before all this. The only countries who didn't get ass blasted on the tariff list were countries like Canada and Mexico, because we had already smacked tariffs onto them, and also countries like Russia and North Korea, because we've apparently ass blasted them enough already. And here are the biggest losers of the whole thing. Number one, all of us. Life is probably about to get a little rockier. The highest individual tariff from Liberation Day was in Lesotho. If you don't know, Lesotho is a country I remembered the name of because it's landlocked inside of South Africa, and that really stood out to me when I was playing GeoGuessr. Our trade deficit with them is massive, and that's because we just buy a fuck ton of diamonds and jeans from them. The tariff rate we set for them is 50%, because we just buy a bunch of shit from them. So they rounded that deficit up to 100% and cut that in half. There's your tariff, Lesotho. It's the highest any country has been smacked with, because why not? There was one target in Trump's crosshairs, though, that I don't think anybody could have seen coming. And that was when Trump placed any tariffs at all on the Heard and McDonald Islands. Those are Antarctic outposts which you can only reach by taking a week-long boat ride from Perth, Australia. Because of this, barely anyone goes there. In fact, no one lives there, and the last time someone set foot on the island was a decade ago. The only fellas currently living on these islands are fucking penguins. I can only imagine this has sent shockwaves through the local community, as the island's already struggling economy further buckles under the weight of Trump's sweeping Liberation Day tariffs. And it turns out this is more than just a simple oversight, as the Trump administration has placed even harsher tariff restrictions on penguins in other places. Some fear that this attack may be racially motivated against penguin kind. For example, the penguins of Madagascar will now have to navigate their their way through a future with a 47% tariff hanging over its head. Other big players like China also already had American tariffs on them, and the Liberation Day tariffs added a 34% tariff rate on top of what was already there, and almost as if to add insult to injury, the US banned government personnel from romantic or sexual relationships with Chinese citizens. I'm sure they cited something like national security as the reason, but for me and several others, we can't help but feel like Asians are being made illegal.
Finally!
We just got here, man! Interracial marriage just got legalized in 1967! Asian folk like me have only had a few generations to get our bearings. Please have mercy! China responded, I can only imagine for both the tariffs and the Asian thing, in kind, by issuing actual reciprocal tariffs, where they placed a 34% tariff on all imports China gets from America. For this next bit, I understand if y'all view the stock market as made-up money, but real or not, that didn't stop the numbers from dropping off a cliff the day after all the shit got announced. Apple was down, Nike was down, Tesla was down even more than usual. Every stock and every sector took a hit from this thing. From now on, every time I end up having too many files on my PC and I gotta take a chainsaw to the physical disks inside the hard drive to clear up space, I'll never be able to look at Winterstat the same way again. All of its organized bricks look like they're laughing at me in mockery, just reminding me of how bad at Wall Street betting I am. I hate to say it, guys, but it's really looking like something finally happened. But I must have no fear, though. If there's one thing that I've learned from Archmage Grums, it's that tweeting every minute of every day is a great idea that no one has ever regretted, and that no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, you should never mess with gamers. Do not fuck with gamers. We're forged by endless boss battles against impossible odds. We do not give up. We do not stop. We are the Terminators of the culture wars. I have some bad news, my balding buddy. They messed with the gamers. Remember how I said absolutely no one remains untouched by these tariffs? Well, Nintendo fans were having the time of their life for a second there, with basically every pipe dream game Nintendo enjoyers have had on their wish list for years getting announced in the Switch 2 Nintendo Direct, only for all that hype and good news to get shit on by the realities of the modern economy. The Switch 2 itself is a fairly reasonable $450, considering inflation and it being a higher piece of tech than the first Switch, but apparently for some games, we're looking at potentially $90 physical cartridges and $80 digital games at some times. What the hell? It's been a big controversy, and watching poor Arlo, one of my favorite gaming YouTubers who is generally apolitical, struggle to address the topic of pricing without jumping into the deep really tugged at my heartstrings.
Lots of bad things have happened in the world and the economy between then and now over the last 8 years. So we thought, okay, 400 is really a sweet spot for like just, wanted to get it into a lot of people's hands, but still treating it like, we've talked about it before, the whole psychological balance thing. That was the sweet spot. But because of the tariff thing, we'll just say that. I'm not going to go into any of that. We'll just say it is now going to become much more expensive for other countries to bring their products here.
Now, the cost of the games and the Switch 2 console aren't necessarily a result of the tariffs. It was more general market conditions. For this next part, though, Arlo was definitely right. The tariff thing is something Nintendo specifically decided is making their lives harder. Pre-orders for Nintendo Switch 2 in the United States will not start on April 9th, 2025. In order to assess the potential impacts of tariffs and evolving market conditions, Nintendo will update at a later date. Fuck! The Switch 2 pricing was looking bad, but the thing America had was the figure not looking so unreasonable when compared to the cost in places like Canada, or even other consoles currently on the market. Now the rest of the world is going to have their pre-order lock-ins before us, but also, if things get bad enough with tariffs in respect to any part of the world that is involved with creating a physical part of the Switch 2, the console may get more expensive for Americans specifically. This is not what we meant by American exceptionalism. It means we're supposed to be the best. What do you mean we need healthcare? See, with tariffs, I'm not going to say that across the board they don't have a place. I'm not smart enough to say there are no situations where they could be useful, but the way I've heard it, they're most useful when applied very intentionally and with a wider strategy at play, not used as a cure-all solution. Most tariffs are issued when you are trying to protect a specific industry that's under threat of a foreign country swooping in and outcompeting that industry at home. But Trump here has slapped them on all products from every country across the board, including a lot lot of shit we just straight up don't currently have the capacity to make in the US, and some things that are next to physically impossible to make in the United States. For instance, coffee. We're one of the biggest importers of the stuff in the world. We love that shit. But there's barely anywhere in the United States where the environment is right to grow the fucking things. It's basically just Hawaii. So, coffee from abroad's probably gonna get more expensive, and there's no at-home replacement to fill it in. To a lot of people, the only way these tariffs make sense is as part of a larger vision Trump has. Common arguments is it's supposed to stop us from getting ripped off and promote at-home production capabilities like American manufacturing. But if this is supposed to hit back at what Trump considers to be America's greatest rival, China, it doesn't really seem like it'll achieve that end. Countries that used to be butt buddies with the US now have massive tariffs slapped on them. They probably feel like we're going through a rough, unstable patch right now and need to at least be left alone to see if we can tweak hard enough to get this out of our system. Thing is, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped, and technically, we did vote for this. And they have no idea what the fuck is going on in our collective consciousness right now to get where we are, I don't think. You will likely see this next image pop up several more times before you and I are dead, where it's China and Europe solemnly looking on as America, which could be viewed as the mesprit of this lake trio, stabs itself in the gut over and over again while screaming bloody murder the whole time. This is a developing situation, and it's impossible for any of us to know exactly where it's gonna go. I'm hoping against hope that I am completely wrong about this whole thing and it will actually be incredible for America, but I don't see these tariffs suddenly becoming more popular as time passes, and their effects can be felt a little more immediately. I'm gonna wrap this video up here. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts, if I got something wrong or missed anything, and be sure to drop a like and subscribe with notifications on. Anyways, this has been Kwite, and I'll see y'all next time.